Now Ayrshire Radio Podcast presents Ayrshire Insights with Elliot Boyce.
Well, it's time for the Local Legend Spotlight, and this week we are celebrating a woman whose energy, leadership and vision have transformed a local organisation into one of Ayrshire's most inspiring creative hubs. Our local legend this week is Fiona McKenzie, Chief Executive of CentreStage, the Kilmarnock-based arts and community organisation that has changed countless lives through creativity, compassion and opportunity. Fiona's journey with CentreStage has been remarkable. What began as a dream to make the arts accessible to everyone has grown into a powerhouse of community programmes, social inclusion projects, performances and creative support for people of all ages from Ayrshire and beyond. I'm delighted to welcome today's local legend, Fiona McKenzie. Fiona, thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for asking me, Elliot.
Right, before we get into your story, it's a Sunday, so the kettles are on across Ayrshire. So the big question is, tomato sauce or brown sauce?
Tomato sauce.
Do you prefer a tea or a coffee?
Always coffee.
And the big one, what is your go-to Sunday morning roll?
It would be a roll with square sliced and a potato scone.
You're listening to Ayrshire Insights with Elliot Boyce.
Now Ayrshire Radio.
I'm chatting with this week's local legend, Fiona McKenzie, the Chief Executive of CentreStage, one of Ayrshire's most loved and impactful organisations. So, Fiona, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Kilmarnock.
Fantastic. So, growing up in Kilmarnock, what did you do as an early age? What was your kind of first job, your first experience of work?
My very, very first job, I lasted 2 days.
Good, yeah.
And it proved that working in the coffee club was not for me. I was not skilled or talented at it, and I very quickly managed to get myself a job playing piano at a dance school, the Susan Fraser School of Dance, where I stayed there for a couple of years.
Fantastic. So always enjoyed your music,
Always music, a musical family.
And you're kind of known as well as the piano woman, aren't you?
That's the label I get the most, and it's the label I like the most.
Yes. So starting off with that, with the piano, where did you go from there?
I became a teacher. I followed my dad into music teaching. I was a secondary school music teacher.
Where did you teach?
I was a principal teacher of music at Grange Academy in Kilmarnock.
Good. So starting off there then, so principal teacher of music. When did you decide, you know what, I've loved teaching in an educational establishment, but I want to try something myself? What did you go next with?
I was coming up to about 40 years old, having been at Grange, incredibly happy years for about 16 years. But things were changing, and I was seeing things happening that I couldn't control or support, primarily around about the amount of young folks who loved coming to music but who didn't necessarily fit in terribly well at the school. I was unaware whilst I was still in school what actually happened to those kids, but I knew that I wasn't fitting in because the way I taught, whilst my results were really good, I didn't really fit the way the schools wanted you to teach, and that coupled with really wanting to explore what would happen if you weren't just developing a community around about 12 to 17 year olds. It really worked with 12 to 17 year olds, but what would happen if you could create a place where absolutely anybody could come along and be part of a community built around music? So it just made sense to think, well, you're a long time dead. Life is not a dress rehearsal, so let's take the risk, let's step into it. It didn't feel like a risk. You could ask my husband, get a very, very different answer, but it didn't feel like a risk, it just felt like the right thing to do. So we took on a wee building in James Little Street in Kilmarnock, turned it into a wee theatre, remortgaged the house to get the bank loan, but wouldn't change a thing.
So what is really resonating, and I love the phrase, you're a long time dead, because it's so true. And I think and this is just right. I mean, it's International Women's Day today. We've heard about some of the amazing stories of people. If you might be doing something and you think, you know what, this isn't for me, or I want to try something, do it. Jump in.
You get one chance. You don't have to stay in the same lane all your life. You can explore other opportunities, and something I think is really important. You should not live your life living out somebody else's dream.
Yes. So go and do what your dream is. I mean, so that must have been a massive jump, because going from principal teacher in a school, it's a very good job.
It's got a pension. It's
got a pension.
Holidays.
I know you've got holidays, a pension, and it's the council, they tend to look after you. Yeah. To then jumping away from that and to really follow what is your passion. So talk to us about the early days then. I mean, you said that you had to remortgage in order to get CentreStage started. Mm. what, is it a business then? So how does it work then from a financial perspective?
CentreStage is a charity. It started off as a private limited company because you couldn't get the bank loans to do what we were wanting to do, but nor did I understand as a teacher that there even was such a thing as the third sector. So we'd put in significant personal investment to get everything up and running. But then as you learned more about what we were actually doing, you learned that we were actually within what is called the third sector. Whether or not that's an accurate representation is up for debate. But we're very, very deeply community rooted, and it's responding to what people want and need to be part of. So over the years discovered that we were actually in the third sector, became a social enterprise with a small charity attached, and over the years the charitable work became greater, and then about 8-9 years ago we became a single charity.
Fantastic. So, I mean, you started off there. So, your first ever place, I mean, how many people, how did you start advertising, and what kind of people were you getting through the door? Was it kids that you'd work with at school, or what was it? It
started off, we never ever thought we'd have anything until maybe 7 years old, and we didn't expect to get MD much older than 40. That was how, naive we were. Very quickly we learned there was demand from all manner of different people, right down to wee babies, we are now literally birth to death, but including everything from additional support needs, disabilities, neurodiversity. It's a community, not a club, but it's always built around you're coming into a place that's hopefully really welcoming. There's always going to be music, but after that it's up to you to tell me what you would really like to get involved with, and we'll try and put that in place so you find your path.
Fantastic. So when you first opened up then, so what was the initial vision? So as soon as you opened that door, what kind of people did you have, and what were they doing when they got there?
The initial type of people who would come to CentreStage back in the day were the people who would have come to the choirs back at school, if that makes any sense. But when I was a school teacher, I loved my choirs, but I loved more when the kids outside the window would make their way into the choir. They didn't think that was really the thing for them, but it actually was the thing for them. It was the thing that led them to a really positive school experience. Those weren't necessarily the kids who could come to CentreStage when we started as a separate organisation. So it was really, really important to get to the point, whilst we really needed people who were able to pay a weekly sub to come along to do that, to keep us operating, we needed to find ways to include people who could not access through financial reasons.
And I think that then just shows, I mean, your passion clearly teaching, but also the community feel. For you, it's not about trying to get money from people. It's more about, it's probably the opposite to the point where if you're able to chip in, fantastic. But see, if you're not, I really want to see you, and I want to give you that opportunity.
That's 100% the rationale for it, because for me, I know what music does for me. I know what being part of things and musical has done for me over my life. I think it's the same with sport in many ways. These things that just connect us as people across the community. But the most important learning from those early days at CentreStage was when the team that was growing were becoming really, really good at doing the things that I was doing. And you've got to give your younger team members coming through a really good chance at being better than you. That allowed me to get out of CentreStage and start doing what I do well in other places, whether that was care homes or schools or community hubs, but most importantly the local prison, where in my first prison classroom of 10 men who were quite confused, they didn't know what they'd been invited to come along to, there were 5 men of those 10 who I had taught as wee boys in schools that I had taught in. And that was a big wake-up call for me, because had I not come out of the school system, I would never have learned what would have happened to those wee boys when they were excluded at the age of 12, 13 or 14. And having met them all these years later, I was privileged to discover the why of why they had ended up in that situation. And we could have done far more as a profession to try and find out why these things had happened. I could have kept them in music. I could have kept them in music all day long, all week long. But I didn't get that choice because I was a music teacher.
There was other places for them to go.
There's other places for them to go. But because you don't fit a certain type of subject, these kids were put out. And it's not about the rights and wrongs, that's just the fact of it. Then, I don't know if things have changed an awful lot.
So digging into the school system then, right? So what's your honest view? So, I mean, people within schools, everybody's got their strong points. I mean, when I was at school, I was useless at art. and art just wasn't my thing. Put me in a class, I think because it's another creative industry, I think the arts teachers get so frustrated by me because like, Elliot, you're not putting the effort. And I was like, I'm not good at it. It wasn't my strong point, but then excelled in other subjects. But if you've got somebody in the school who has behavioural challenges, now behavioural challenges can be through a multitude of things, and it can probably lead to the fact of maybe opportunities and things that may be happening not in school and at home life and stuff like that, which might not be as positive as other people. What would you say if you were in charge of education and you could make the decision? What would you do in order to deal with people who may excel in one thing but not the other and have behavioural challenges out with, let's say, music, for example?
I think it's a tremendously complex thing just now, and I really don't think the education system is serving anybody just now. Most of all teachers, and we have to look at teachers first, because teachers are the people who have to deliver education to these young folks. And if teachers in school systems don't feel safe, don't feel heard, don't feel able to deliver, we've got something really wrong here. So actually preparing teachers coming out of teacher training for what the reality is of education now, and really caring for teachers and what they're living with just now, really listen to them, is at least a first step. I think we still deliver, not all the time, and this is a sweeping statement and I don't mean it to be, we're fundamentally still teaching, especially in secondary schools, to a Victorian model of kids sitting in lines with a foreman at the front for a factory line that doesn't really exist anymore. So there are things that really do need to change to allow young folks to be heard. Academic excellence and going to university is always celebrated, as it should be, but vocational excellence is just as important and should be celebrated and needs to be reset as something that's incredibly valuable. I want somebody who can actually fix my toilet, not just write about how to fix the toilet.
Absolutely.
And then there's the what we're talking about today, the entrepreneurial young folks, those kids who really don't fit the box, who are generally raging, who are project managing, duck and diving all day long, generally riddled with neurodiversity, ADHD running through every bit of their body. Those are the wee entrepreneurs, and imagine what could happen if we could get those kids at the age of 16 ready with their business plans to go and create their own boxes, because these kids don't fit the box, and why should they if they just have a drive to build their own?
And when you look at the amount of people that we got to get on this show, I think every single week, just about, when you speak to people that come on, I mean, and then also leading on to people like Sir Tom Hunter, all of these people who have been on the show have all been on that separate box, and they're the people that are driving the economy, they're driving business, and they're driving things right here in Ayrshire and across Scotland and the world to some extent as well. So Fiona, fantastic start there, really interesting to hear about the passion and what's driven you to create CentreStage. Up next, we're going to find out about the challenges and the big wins in running that organisation in Kilmarnock.
Tune in live every Sunday from 10 a.m. for Ayrshire Insights with Elliot Boyce.
Only on Now Ayrshire Radio.
Now Ayrshire.
We are still with Fiona McKenzie from CentreStage, the leader, visionary and the driving force behind one of Ayrshire's most important community organisations. So Fiona, let's talk about the journey. So what would you say your first kind of big win's been with CentreStage?
Getting open in the first place.
Absolutely.
Literally, we were still waiting to be signed off by Ayrshire as people were lining up to come through the doors on the 26th of June 2006. So just getting it open in the timeline was quite the challenge.
What would you say the moment that you realised CentreStage it wasn't just working, it was really taking off?
That was years. And see, to be honest, we're coming up to our 20th anniversary, and in many ways I genuinely feel as if we're just getting started, which maybe sounds a bit bizarre, but there's been so much learning over the past 20 years as we discovered different types of people who needed different places to belong, because the wee theatre we had wasn't necessarily the place for them at that point, but it always became the place. So we would have, over the years, we had 15 different buildings, which people maybe didn't know about. We were also in 30 different communities with buses and various other means of going mobile, but all of those communities would connect into CentreStage, and in that place everybody could reimagine what their lives were and not necessarily talk about what the past had been. They could talk about what the future might look like, and we could then be connecting them into different organisations who could help them get there. It's not about us doing it, it's about us showing people how to do it for themselves.
Really as a community then, and one of the points you made just prior to the ads there, which I thought was fantastic, fantastic was about seeing people and the learning experience that you're getting off people that you probably feel that you could have helped more. I mean, you mentioned that you were in Kilmarnock prison, at Bow House. You were in there. You'd met people who you'd actually taught who have now ended up in that situation through various factors. Do you feel that you continue to learn off of every person who you meet or who you walk through the door with you?
Without a shadow of a doubt. We are always learning all the time. In fact, the song that I'm going to ask for later on is actually our CentreStage anthem. It's Lean on Me. We all need each other. We're all learning from each other. We should all be curious about each other as a community, as people. How can we help each other? And every single day you learn something. And particularly folks who haven't had that opportunity to perhaps learn as much about themselves or their own hopes and aspirations as they could have. When you meet folk who've had a hard time or more challenging time, and when you ask them at the age of 20 or 30 or 40 or even 50 or older, what really would you love to be? And you can actually help, even just a little bit, start that. That's a huge thing.
You're right, I think that's fantastic as well. And the big thing that I took from you as well was the fact that you were on a journey now, and you jumped from that, and probably asking people. I mean, there's people that will come through the door of CentreStage that maybe if that wasn't available would have left school, maybe went the college, uni route if they went the academical route, or if not went into trades. But maybe their true passion was to perform, to be involved in something in the arts, and having that place locally that people can go. Fantastic. And have you got any real success stories that you think of somebody who maybe was a bit out there and now is involved and is growing into something? Numerous people,
particularly we have artists like John Andrew, we have numerous young performers, but it's all about trying to create the conditions where we really have good people coming through. It really doesn't matter if they go into creative industries, which is a phenomenal employer and should be respected as such. It's just about allowing people to find their place, to connect with other people and to decide what it is they really, really want to do in their life. I don't care if they want to do spreadsheets and algebra, which I have absolutely no skill in. If that's what their dream is, let's help them get there.
Absolutely. I mean, one of our presenters, Josh Woods. Josh does a Friday night along with Harry. I mean, he's heavily involved with CentreStage.
Both boys, absolutely incredible.
And Harry as well, yeah.
Absolutely. And they came along to volunteer when we were doing the initial Kilmarnock Fair Festival in the Howard Park a couple of years ago, and they got a wee go alongside DJ Bems, and they were just phenomenal. And then from that, they've done it themselves. All we had to do was make some introductions, then they drove the bus themselves. You just need to unlock that wee bit of potential, and then those who want to do it will follow it.
Absolutely. I'm hoping you're talking metaphorically. I don't really fancy Josh driving a bus at this stage.
Oh, you never know. I wouldn't put it past him.
Right, okay, so there's obviously, with every organisation, it does have its tough days. What would you say the kind of hardest moment or the biggest challenge you've had to overcome in building CentreStage into what it is today? Oh,
there's been some really brutal ones, but I'd say without a shadow of a doubt, the worst was the process of moving everything that we're doing across the community into a single place. So when we moved into, or when we were working towards moving into the former Kilmarnock Academy, to create what is known as the CentreStage Village now, because it's not just the home for us, it's the home for 30 other organisations permanently. We had just started the build, we were dilapidating our existing sites, and COVID hit. So one of the main reasons we were moving in as a charity was to build our unrestricted reserves. We only had 3 months unrestricted reserves. We had to go to a horrible phase of redundancies. It was touch and go whether we would ever make it through. But we had such belief from people and organisations who really knew what this building could do for people if we made it through.
Yep.
It was to be a non-siloed way of getting help and support to people 7 days a week when they wanted it, when they needed it. And if that building had lain as a white elephant on that hill, I couldn't have lived with it. So we had to keep going, and then having come through it, we had to make it into what we told our funders we would turn it into.
And you managed to achieve that. What would you say about in order going through COVID and navigating through that? I mean, because as you mentioned, CentreStage to people is more of it can be a home from home to some people. How did you manage to keep the group connected through that really challenging period, especially with some of the neurodiverse people that you work with and other challenges within that?
First and foremost, the building was immediately filled with the people who needed us most, the people who were struggling with isolation, struggling with mental health. They were still there, people who needed support with food or material need. We delivered a huge amount of what we call dignified food provision throughout Ayrshire, but we didn't do it ourselves. We worked with furloughed chefs from Buzzworks who took a huge amount of surplus food, turned it into incredible meals, and through our community links we were able to get out 40,000 meals over a very, very short period of time. But we didn't have to do all the work, we just had to act as the conductor and connector, and then social media became absolutely crucial. So people who had found their place and who were really starting to flourish and thrive but would have absolutely gone back under the duvet and maybe never come out, realised that they were still part of the community. So it was a really intensive programme of not just support but a lot of fun online, and people can judge you for talking about fun, but we really, really need a lot more hope and joy and optimism. So we should not undervalue the fact that our primary function at CentreStage is to make people feel happy. Yeah. I want them to feel happy when they walk through the door, even if you're just coming for a cup of coffee. I'm delighted you're coming for a cup of coffee, because that's helping us keep the lights on and employ people to do what we do.
Every little does help with. And how can people that maybe don't want to be necessarily involved with it, I mean, a lot of people live busy lives, how can people actually support you as a charity?
Literally, just come along for a coffee, come and join a class if you would like to, come to the numerous performances we put on. We put on over 100 performances every year by our own community. Last night I had the Rocket Men entertaining a capacity audience, which is a group that comes along on Thursday nights, a bunch of men, dads, brothers, uncles, but they support each other, they sing together, they have a brilliant time, and last night they gave their audience a fantastic experience. So just by coming along to the performances and productions, you're really helping us. You can support scholarships. There are multiple ways to do it.
Lots of options and lots of ways to support. So Fiona, I know you touched on it earlier. What would you say that song that inspires you or marks an important moment in your journey is?
It's Lean on Me. You can't do it alone. You must be able to work with people and trust people to help you. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way, but you can't ever lose that faith that people are actually fundamentally there to help each other.
And it's also your anthem.
It is so. We sing it before most shows, most rehearsals. It just reminds us why we're here.
Now streaming
Ayrshire Insights, hosted by Elliot Boyce.
This is Now Ayrshire Radio.
You're still with this week's local legend, Fiona McKenzie from CentreStage. But before we find out about that community links and the Ayrshire Pride, it is time for Bargain of the Week. So normally, Fiona, the listeners get in touch and let us know the Bargain of the Week. But what happened earlier was, with it being International Women's Day, we didn't get near it because everybody was giving shout outs. So you're going to have to do it for the full of Ayrshire today. What is your Bargain of the Week? It better be a good one.
It's a wee bit embarrassing, but it's a reduced price prawn cocktail from Marks and Spencer's. £2.24.
That's quite expensive, is it not?
It's Marks and Spencer's.
I was going to say, you don't get that much of a bargain there. £2.24 for a prawn cocktail, and that was reduced. Yeah, there we go. So that's your Bargain of the Week. You've done that for the full of Ayrshire today, since we didn't manage to get around to that earlier on. Right, so Fiona, you're obviously huge across Ayrshire, and the things that you do for Ayrshire as part of CentreStage. But what do you think of stations like us at Now Ayrshire Radio?
I think it's absolutely fantastic. I was so delighted to hear that it was happening. It's been really, really sadly missed having that Ayrshire presence, and I think the energy and the voice that you guys are giving to this whole, the three local authorities, whilst I'd prefer it to be one, I think that you position yourselves pan Ayrshire and beyond is absolutely fantastic.
Absolutely. We're big for Ayrshire, and I think today's been a real stark reminder of the amount of people in Ayrshire who are just smashing it, and especially in International Women's Day today, which I'm really delighted at the response, the amount of people that got in touch and hearing all those amazing stories, similar to yours, but there's so many people out there.
It's absolutely incredible. I'm really fortunate to work with some incredible women across so many different sectors, but through the Hunter Foundation I've been involved with the Changemakers programme, and in that I have to say that meeting people like Susan Actimel from Homes for Good, Susan McGee, Flexible Childcare Scotland, Sylvie Douglas, Mrs. Miss, they do absolutely life-changing work, and they are phenomenal social entrepreneurs. But if you'll forgive me to do a wee shout out for an incredible entrepreneur who's actually based at the CentreStage village, Leanne Cairns is a wonderful milliner. So if you're ever needing a hat, you get yourself in there and she will make you a beautiful, beautiful creation.
Fantastic. I'll keep that in mind when I'm looking for my next hat.
A fascinator.
Absolutely. Do you know what? There's more of that, because I know the Ayr races and everything that comes up locally like that's your place to get a fascinator. There we go. I'm pretty sure there's other fascinator shops out there as well if you do wish to go. Now, what do you think? So you've got that with Now Ayrshire Radio, and we love being here in Ayrshire, but our tagline, you'll see it around the studio, is that local feeling. What does that local feeling mean to you?
For me, it's about hope and optimism and confidence and happiness, because I get awful tired of hearing all the negative stuff that's out there. We know there's negative stuff, but every time I meet folk, people are talking positively, and every time folk come through the doors of CentreStage, they're talking positively. So the more we talk positively, the more we're going to change the narrative, and the more people are going to want to invest in this amazing place. And then we can start talking in a Scottish context, a UK context and beyond. We're small, but we're big enough to make a huge, huge difference.
Absolutely, and you're right, it's all about making noise and pushing the narrative that you want and keeping it away from the negativity. Now, Ayrshire's future, what's one thing if you could tick the box and make a decision, what's one thing you hope for it?
For me, it would be a single Ayrshire. I think we're dividing us makes no sense. It makes no sense economically. It makes no sense from a community connectedness perspective. It puts us in competition. It stops us collaborating. We're able to collaborate, fortunately, because we just proceed till apprehended. But it can be difficult when you are siloed by process and system.
So Fiona McKenzie, you call for one single Ayrshire council?
100% do.
Absolutely. Now, and I know that we're hearing just now as well that they're starting to, the three councils are starting to collaborate.
Yes.
And looking at shared services, but do you think it should go one stage further?
We need to look to community for solutions and not look for more and more services. We need to look at things that data says are not working and stop doing them. The advice we've had from the private sector, who've advised us really strongly to come through the hard times, you have to make hard decisions. If something's not working, you stop, you fail fast. It's not a failure unless you keep going with it. So when services are not working, and they're clearly not working in many areas, not through people being bad, but just it's hard to make those decisions to stop. But if we're hearing all the time there's no money out there, there's an awful lot of money still out there.
The accumulation of the budgets.
Absolutely. And if you stop doing things that aren't working, and if people are challenged to perhaps find their dream elsewhere if they're not happy in their work, there are multiple questions to be answered, but there's plenty of money and there's also plenty of jobs out there. We need to be a wee bit more brave about exploring where they are.
And answering the right questions.
Answering the right questions.
Now, going on to CentreStage again, how do you feel that CentreStage has contributed to the local community? I mean, I could probably list a load just with this interview and what I'm aware of, but not just in the arts, but in people's everyday lives.
As a charity, the main things that we are always measuring are, it's about loneliness, it's about poor mental health, it's about poverty, but I hate using that language. Just by bringing people together and connecting them as a community, you're seeing happiness, you're seeing joy, you're seeing friendship, so naturally things start to improve. And the great thing is, loneliness does not look at your age, it doesn't look at your bank balance, neither does mental health. Best way out of poverty, and I know you had Sir Tom on a few weeks ago, Hunter Foundation's mindset, as is mine, the best way out of poverty is a well-paid job. So if we don't keep young people in education or in a pathway, we are never going to deal with child poverty properly.
And having the positive destination at the end of it.
And them steering that, not having to fit a column that says you can't do 3 arts, you've got to do a science, you've got to do a language. We've got to go on a journey of reframing.
And that touches back to your education point. So there's probably the curriculum, which is decided at national level. So you've got that national curriculum, and that's then filtered down. It's probably done with the right intentions to fit the large populace of pupils, but it's how do you bridge that gap with that other percentage who are just as important as the large populace, but giving them into that right pathway in order to steer them to a positive destination.
Absolutely, and it's exploring different places where young people might want to learn. You don't need to just learn in a school. So we're very fortunate we're actually in an old school building, which is in the main part filled struggled every single day with people who hated the school or who still don't like the school, but they come to CentreStage every day in an old school building, and the only difference is the welcome, and they feel happy and safe when they're there.
It's not about where you are, it's who you're with.
Absolutely.
Right, okay, we have had a great time with you this morning, Fiona, but up next we're going to be doing 5 fast ones, so looking forward to that.
Dear.
Plus finding out what's next for CentreStage.
This is the Ayrshire Insights podcast with Elliot Boyce.
We are still with Fiona McKenzie from CentreStage, and it is time for 5 fast ones. So Fiona, quick fire questions here, no thinking, because you've had no chance to think. We've been that busy. I'm going to shout them out and see if you can get them, so we find out more about you. So what is your favourite takeaway?
Chinese.
A song that always lifts your mood?
Something Inside So Strong.
Best thing about Ayrshire?
The people.
Weirdest moment at CentreStage?
Every day there's something.
And who plays you in a movie of your life?
Winona Ryder.
There we go. Thank you for playing 5 fast ones. We'll be asking our guests every single week to get involved. So Fiona, what is next for you and for CentreStage?
The next thing is we're getting ready to celebrate our 20th anniversary, but we're getting really ready to really start promoting live music. We've always been very much about the performing arts, which is really well established, as is our community work, but now it's about really pushing live music and opportunities in creative industries across the whole village. So some of you might remember there was an amazing place in Kilmarnock called The Gateway, which was a fantastic community centre that gave great platforms to young bands coming through and establish some really great performers. So really looking to really re-establish that at CentreStage and create a platform for bands coming through, and then hopefully push them down into the town and across Ayrshire to really start reinvigorating live music in towns, nighttime economy, all the good stuff.
We touched on it earlier, and doing all that, what we need though is the support of the people to actually go and support it.
Absolutely, and we're very, very fortunate that we see about 3,500 folk, 4,000 folk every single week in CentreStage, which is incredible. If we can start really pushing them down into Kilmarnock, which I love. We were always told CentreStage wouldn't work in Kilmarnock because Kilmarnock doesn't do the arts, which is a dreadful thing to say. We've been kept alive by the people of Kilmarnock, Ayrshire and beyond. So live music is front and centre, and we're also planning on bringing some really, really great acts to Kilmarnock, so watch this space.
Really looking forward to finding out about it. So before we wrap things up today, have you got any final shout outs and thanks?
Just to my family for putting up with me. I have the most patient husband, son and daughter you could ever imagine. So thank you to Neil, Fraser and Kate for all that they do.
Fiona, a massive thank you for coming on this morning. It's been great to hear about you, hearing about the amazing work at CentreStage. Fiona, thanks again.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is the Ayrshire Insights podcast.
Never miss an episode. Hit subscribe now.